This is Jocko podcast number 49 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. It starts off quietly. When you're young, you don't quite know where it comes from, and at first you don't even know what it is. But you know it's something. You feel it. You feel it growing. You're just a child, but you feel it. Something inside of you. And at some point, that thing, it crosses over. It goes from being something that you don't fully recognize, something that you don't completely understand. It goes from that to being you. Those things become you. It is you. It is your emotions. It is sadness and happiness and passion and anger and joy, and it is rage. And those things, those emotions, they burn. And they burn hot. They're a fire that grows out of control. They fuel your mind and your body and your soul. And that marks the change. Becoming a person. Becoming an individual instead of a child. You release the inferno. You burn what you touch, and you ignite those near you. And in that fire, you burn. You burn out of control, and people around you, the people, the other humans, the normal humans, they do their best to extinguish that fire. They tell you to relax. They tell you to calm down. They tell you to get a grip. They tell you it isn't healthy. And that's because they are scared. They're scared of that fire in your soul, and so they tell you that you are crazy. And because the anger and the rage and the sadness are so brutal and so hard to suffer through, you begin to listen to those people, to those normal humans, and so you begin to subdue the fire. You stop feeding it. You start to get those emotions under control, and at some point you realize this is better. Better to control those emotions, better to starve those passions. You begin to shut them down. You are a child no more. No more angry youth. No, now you are an adult. A responsible adult. You control your emotions. You don't let them control you. And the anger and the rage and the sadness, they begin to wither up. They become listless. Just memories. But when the anger and the rage and the sadness fade, so does the passion and the happiness and the joy. And of course, because it happens slowly, the creeping disease, you don't notice it. It isn't a bolt of lightning or a violent explosion that kills them, but a slow, slithering death. Then one day, you wake up and you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror. And as you look into your own faded, lifeless eyes, you see something. Something you recognize. Something subtle and worn, but something still filled with a subdued power. And you remember. You remember what that felt like. What anger and joy and horror and happiness felt like. And you wonder what happened to them. And you realize that in order to control your passions, you destroyed them. All of them. But let me tell you, they aren't dead. They cannot so easily be killed. They are there and they are waiting to be released again. And no, you don't have to let them get out of control, but you can certainly let them out into the wild. You can dance with them. And, of course, while you need to balance them and maintain the upper hand over your emotions, you can still relish in their glory. But you have to let them out. You have to expose the nerves, feel the pain, feel the frustration, the sadness, the shock, the anger, and in those adverse moments, then you also get to feel the laughter, the joy, the gratitude, the passion. Because it is the passion, not indifference, that fuels greatness. And it is conviction, not tranquility, that drives execution. And while we must not ever let our emotions dictate our decisions, we are not here to eradicate our emotions. Control them? Yes, of course, you must maintain control of your emotions. Keep them in check? Yes, by all means. Emotional restraint is a necessity. But destroy them? No. That is not what we do. So, let your guard down. Expose your weaknesses. Take some risks. Open up your fragile soul. And those embers, those smoldering embers that you have tried to smother, but that are ready to ignite again and become an inferno of energy and of power. Feed those embers. Light that fire again. Stoke it with air and fuel and more fire. And let it burn. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
Those were just some thoughts I had as I was thinking about, one of those dichotomies in life. And obviously I talk a lot about maintaining control of your emotions, but we can go too far with that idea. And I wanted to remind myself that if we take that idea too far, we're actually going to regress backwards in a negative way. My opinion.
I dig it.
And last podcast went a little bit long, which brings us to straight up Q&A today.
Yep.
Questions from the interwebs.
Yeah.
Bring it. Oh, you got some comment?
Best way to submit questions, just because people have been asking me.
Okay.
Twitter, right? Or
Twitter's really solid.
Facebook.
Facebook is also good.
Yeah.
Instagram, don't.
Yeah.
Don't.
Instagram stuff.
I'm on Instagram, but it's harder for me to compile those questions when people hit me with those. They don't stand out as much. They're in a caption of a picture, 27 comments down, and it just,
right.
Yeah, not
the best way.
Not the best way.
Yeah. Facebook, Twitter. Every once in a while, people will submit them through the store.
Mm-hmm.
And
possible way.
It's good, but you kind of do run the risk of there being store issues that are pressing, and then I'm like, okay, let me get back to this question, whether it be to forward it or whatever. Yeah, so you run the risk of it maybe getting shuffled to the bottom or something.
Yeah, I'm trying to think there might be a more efficient way to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe I should just be doing maybe I should do for each podcast on Facebook, say, hey, if you have questions for the next podcast, ask them on this thread right here. Mm-hmm. That might be a way to do it.
What about an email? Questions at...
That might be a good idea, too. Yeah, that might be a good idea.
Interesting. All right.
If only I knew someone that knew how to set that up.
Yep.
All right. Speaking of questions from the interweb, what do you got?
First question. Jocko, what is the biggest turnaround on stance/opinion you've ever made?
Now, this is one of those questions that I sat there and thought about it for a while. And then I realized that the answer was sitting right in front of my face, literally sitting right in front of my face. And that is this. Mm-hmm. It's the podcast, the book, the social media, all of it. Because I've talked about this before. I was raised in the SEAL teams to be the quiet professional. And as a matter of fact, one of my favorite SEALs when I was a young guy at Team 1, this guy was just a total badass frogman. And I learned a ton from him. And he was actually, some people will say, oh, that guy's good at everything. This guy was actually awesome at everything. Like everything that there was to do, at shooting, at fighting, at climbing, at tactics. Everything that he did, he was awesome at. And he was super, super hardcore, just tough. And in fact, one of the stories about him is that when he joined the Navy and he had to come to boot camp, I guess in San Diego, he paddled a kayak from where he lived to get to San Diego. And he was 17 years old, by the way. He was just a 17-year-old kid, joined the Navy when he was 17, and then had no way of getting here. So take a kayak, put it in the water, and paddle to San Diego. I don't know. That seems to be the smart way to do things.
Sure.
And so back in the day, he had a hat. And he had this hat. And this is before you see SEAL memorabilia everywhere. You just see it, all over the place. He had this hat with just a trident on it. Nothing else, just a trident. And then under the trident, it just said the words, the silent option. And I always thought to myself, yes, that is it right there. That's us, right? The silent option. No fanfare, no news, no parade, no fame or fortune or glory of any kind. No, none of that. The silent option. That's it. And pretty much everybody that I looked up to in the SEAL teams had that kind of attitude. And there's something that is obviously so pure about that attitude. So selfless. That none of what you did as a SEAL was ever for any kind of recognition, ever. And that to me was sort of the code. Now, there were people that stepped out from that code. And while it certainly wasn't encouraged, it wasn't really ridiculed either. I mean, people did it. People wrote books, and it wasn't looked that down upon at the time, unless you were a bad team guy. If you were a bad SEAL, or if you were a guy that had a bad reputation, you would be crushed in the SEAL teams, amongst the team guys in the community. Now, civilians, they don't know the difference, right? I mean, to civilians, how can they tell? They just, a SEAL is a SEAL is a SEAL, so they're good with it. But in the teams, if you had a bad reputation, your reputation would get even worse if you broke the code. So when I retired, I had zero intention of going public, right? Of becoming this. And then when I started working with civilian companies, and Leif and I formed a company, Echelon Front, and we realized pretty quickly that there was a big need for people to learn what we had to teach. And really quickly, the demand for us to write this down and be able to give it to people grew, and it was really obvious to us. So when that started, and we wrote it down, and then that started to transform. This idea of what we had written down started transforming into becoming a book, like a legitimate book. I got really nervous and scared and kind of almost sick, right? I was definitely very weary about it. And I think I did some little self-sabotage along the way, just a little bit here or there. I don't know, this is probably not going to, I think I did some of that stuff. I'd have to think about it. In fact, I know I did some of it, because it's kind of an all or nothing proposition, right? You're either do it or you don't do it. And I guess you could try and use like a pseudonym, but then that's not me, right? I'm not going to make up a personality, right? And not be me, right? So that wasn't really an option. And furthermore, I knew that doesn't really last either. I mean, the pseudonyms, eventually people figure out who they are, and so that's the way it works. And I think the thing that finally made me say, okay, I'm going to do this, is that as I decided, like, okay, I'm going to do this, I just kind of knew I wasn't going to be anything else other than what I was, right? I'm not going to try and put on some persona or be something that I'm not. I'm just going to be me. And I've got, that's what I'm going to do. And so that's what I did. The me that is here is just me. There's nothing special. That's just who I am. And that's all I did, was basically expose what I am to, people in the public. Now, the thing is, now that I actually am out there a little bit, and people can kind of see me in the world, right? There's definitely some things that I don't like about it. Or I shouldn't say I don't like them. There's some challenges, right? There's some challenges there. For instance, you're being watched all the time. You're being followed, and you're being judged. And those things right there are coincidentally the exact same kind of challenges you face when you're in a leadership position that I faced when I was in a leadership position. Oh, people are watching me. Oh, people are judging me. I'm used to that. That's what it was like when I was in the SEAL teams. And just like when I was in the SEAL teams, I always tried to stay true to what I believed in and what I believed was right. And not to say I never made mistakes. I obviously did, but I always gave it my all to do the best job I could do, and to take care of my guys, my brothers, and my friends. That's what I always tried to do. And really, that's all I'm still trying to do, is just to give something back, to pass on some of the little things that I learned along the way. And really, when I get the feedback from my SEAL teammates, from guys that are still active duty in the SEAL teams, from soldiers and Marines that are retired, or guys that are still on active duty, or guys that transition to the civilian world, all those guys from the front lines that are on the front lines right now. And then guys that are law enforcement and firefighters. And when that whole crew, that whole group of people send me some kind of thanks, it's awesome. And in addition to them, and I don't know if this is surprising or not, but I hear from just everyday normal people too, civilians, right? Businessmen, laborers, entrepreneurs, builders, mechanics, plumbers, electricians, software engineers, doctors, men and women, girls and boys, young and old, just every imaginable size, shape, color of person from every walk of life. And I hear from them. And when I hear from them and I see that they're getting something out of this, that makes those little challenges of judgment and scrutiny, it makes all those worthwhile to me. Because once again, I feel like I'm part of something that's bigger than me, bigger than myself, something more powerful than I could ever be by myself, something stronger than I could ever be alone. And for me to be doing what I can do to help that, and to have trying to help be both the task and the reward. It's a reward to help people. That to me has made it worthwhile.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, okay, the silent professional.
Mm-hmm. The quiet professional.
Yeah.
And the silent option.
Yeah.
Two different variations on the
thing.
same theme.
Is that because if that wasn't there, I would imagine you'd get a bunch of, hey, look at me, I was such a badass, and all these stories, and because I think that like what you and Leif have, and even this podcast and stuff, sure, there's like references to war, but it's not about like, ooh, let me spin all the cool tales that the war that I went through and stuff like that. It's more about like the actual principles of leadership and what can be effective, Even though I know the general public would probably want to hear every last cool story on how you saved this person or, killed all these bad guys or whatever, everyone will want to hear that. I would want to hear that. But that's not what it's about. That's not like what you're going public with, It's more about like, okay, this valuable stuff that is tried, tested in basically the harshest of conditions, that work everywhere. And like, that's the valuable part. I don't even know if that's even like seeking glory in any way.
Well, again, I've said this before. You can say that you're not trying to seek glory, but then when you write a 300-page book about yourself, you know what I mean? And then you have a podcast about yourself. It's like it just is what it is. Like there's no that has a level of self-centeredness that you can't. Yeah. I mean, you can't avoid. I can't deny. Right? I can't deny. Like, I actually know the podcast is it's a podcast, and I talk on it for 2 hours. Right? That's me talking. Right? Yeah. So there is a level of that you can't escape from. And I don't know if I talked about this before, but that book, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, which maybe I'll do, but it's about the hippies and the drug revolution. Well, there's one part of it where this guy is listening. He's up in Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco, and he goes on this tangent about how what they're saying is me, right. me, look at me. Yeah. And when I read that for the first time, I was like, oh, I never want to be that person that's saying that. Yeah. And that's that. But again, the dichotomy here is I have a podcast, I have a book, And the book is me, and the podcast, me. And so it's unavoidable to have a podcast that you talk on and not have it somehow be about you. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So that's a real challenge. And I do my best to mitigate that.
Right.
But you can't stop it. It is factually a podcast that I'm in. It is factually a book that I wrote.
Right.
You know, it's a book that factually Leif wrote. So that's just what it is. Yeah. And so you can't take those away. The only thing that mitigates that feeling from me is, again, what I just said, is when I got soldiers, Marine, when I got SEAL teammates of mine that are fired up, and they're saying, hey, that was awesome. Thanks for that one. This was great. I never knew that, or whatever they're going to say. Yeah. Right. And then on top of that, you get civilians that are saying, hey, I stopped using drugs because of your podcast. That is awesome.
Yeah.
I don't like drugs. And so when somebody tells me that they stopped using drugs because of the podcast, that makes me feel very gratified. When somebody calls me up, somebody on Twitter just said, a guy's like 53 years old. And he said, hey, I've lost X amount of pounds, 40 something pounds. And he said, I just did the first legit pull-up of my life. 53 years old. Yeah. 53 years old, just did the first legitimate pull-up of his life. He's like, thank you. Yeah. That is worth the daggers that stick me in my brain, because I know I sold out.
Yeah.
Right? I sold out. But that's what it is.
Is it just in your? I mean, do you get like scrutiny from people at all for quote unquote selling out, or is it?
Not
or
really.
Do you think? Yeah.
my bros in the teams are fire. They're
right. Yeah. That's what I would think, and it is, because the whole dynamic. I mean, you gotta be like Jocko podcast. It's called Jocko podcast. It's about me. You kind of have to do that. I mean, there's a small element of that you have to include about yourself.
Yeah,
for credibility reasons, all this stuff. But then aside from that, it's valuable stuff. It's not glory-seeking stuff at all. This is like stuff that's helpful. Yeah. It'll help, like the stuff that you can benefit from this podcast, from the book. If the people in your neighborhood all incorporated these principles into their life, it'd be a better neighborhood. So it's not like, I'm just this, look at me, I'm a warrior. It's not that.
No.
So it makes it worth it. I mean, I dig it though, that like tradition. Let's just say if there's like a person who's like, hey, hey, I dig what you're doing, but you shouldn't do that. That's the code. That's the tradition. That's the code you sold out. I would understand that, but I think that's just like you're not looking at the big picture.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it definitely was. When I hear from active duty military, when I hear from my SEAL bros that are telling me this is awesome, that makes it worthwhile to me, and that's sort of why I keep doing it. That, and again, these civilian folks that are out there that are just changing their lives, and again, whenever they say, "Oh, thank you," I say, "I didn't do anything. You did it." That guy that did his first pull-up, his first legit pull-up in 53 years of life, you know what? That's awesome. I didn't do that pull-up. He did it. He had to put all the work in. All he did was change his attitude and get in the game, and now he's having a much better situation in his life, because your life is better. If you go from 0 pull-ups to 1, your life just got better. Your life just got a lot better, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it was interesting as I sat here and talked about when I thought about the question, the biggest turnaround. I've been really pretty steady in my beliefs for a long time. I mean,
about this, you mean?
No, just in general. In general, if you were to interview me now and you interviewed me 10 years ago, they'd be close. I was probably a little bit dumber 10 years ago. I was dumber 6 months ago. But my broad beliefs would be somewhat similar, right?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, okay, what's the biggest turnaround? And then I realized, oh, yeah, obviously, this is a huge turnaround for me. Yeah. And there were guys that, when guys in the SEAL teams found out that I had a book coming out, there was definitely some guys that were like, dude, what are you doing? And I was, and then they'd read it and say, hey, man, credit. Yeah. It's cool. All good, and that's the way it is.
Let's say you were to not rewind life, but you're take the Jocko from before before Ramadi. How about that? Jocko from, and then the idea was introduced. Hey, like, what did you feel about that? Like, if someone went and wrote a book and did a podcast or something, like, what was your take?
Well, there was
on
no
it back
podcast
then?
back then, but generally negative.
Yeah.
That's why it's a big turnaround.
Right.
Because if you told me that years ago, I'd be like, oh, we're quiet professionals. We don't do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So here I am, Mr. Quiet Professional.
Yeah. Not so quiet.
Not so quiet.
Still a professional though.
Trying to keep it professional. Definitely trying to keep it professional.
Yeah, man, it's good. Yeah, is there how like some people who change their attitude on things all the time sometimes get frowned upon. This is just in general for being like a flip flopper or something.
Yeah.
You see it in like politics and stuff. But isn't that kind of good if your ideas about things always are updated?
Yeah, it's okay with me. I don't mind. I don't mind if people change their opinion over time as they bring on new knowledge. But there's a point where that becomes ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. Well, it kind of depends on why they're changing their mind.
Yeah, that's true too.
So if it's like with the introduction of new facts and stuff like
Right.
that, then they're like, okay, I didn't know all that. Now, it paints a broader, more accurate picture. So now I feel this way, or starting to feel this way about it. But there's a bias, talk about cognitive bias I think it's called backfire effect. And it's the opposite. So like new factual information will come in, and the tendency is to dig deeper into your current belief.
Oh, for sure. In fact, I can talk about that. I've seen that happen before. And when I've seen that happen is people, the way that they first learn to do something in the SEAL teams is the way they believe is correct.
Right.
And you have to beat it out of them. As we learn new tactics, like wherever some guy went to their first training at a SEAL team, wherever they went and whoever taught them, that's sort of what they believe. Yeah. And anyone else that comes in with a new idea will be, oh, yeah, man, you don't know what this. No, that's not the best way. Yeah. And so, I figured that out real quick when I was in training, when I was running training, and I realized, I got to get over this barrier of, this guy learned it at this team or wherever, or he learned it from this guy, and so he's got to have that in his head that's the only way to do things. Cool, just gotta. I wouldn't aggressively attack it, of course. I'd say, oh yeah, that's a great tactic what they do. Yeah, and you know what we're about to show you actually mixes in with that tactic good. You might want to, it's something you could use along with your tactic, and then they realize that the tactic we're teaching is superior because we've evolved, right? I had to evolve. We learned new tactics all the time. The fundamental principles didn't change, but the execution at a tactical level would change because we got better.
Updated,
Yeah, well, it's called war. We went to war. And as soon as we went to war, we started figuring out some of the stuff that we had been taught didn't really function the way it was literally like pre-UFC martial arts.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right?
Yeah.
Pre-UFC martial arts, if you learn that, if I touch your neck in this particular manner, you're going to fall down and nothing is going to save you from that. Yeah. And if you get taught that, you might believe it.
Yeah.
And then somebody punches you in the face.
I know.
Or does a double leg takedown on you and slams you into the ground.
Yeah, when you try to hit their neck or something. Yeah,
when you try and karate chop their neck. So it was the same thing in the SEAL teams. We had tactics that had evolved during a peacetime environment in a bubble. And so when the war started, we said, ooh, okay, we need to do an immediate check on all these things.
Yeah. My friend was in from out of town this past weekend. We watched the fights, and the guys were in this specific position, standing kind of from the back there. And he asked, he's like, hey, couldn't he just like throw knees and give him like the meanest Charlie horse right there? And then we were like, it's not, we don't say it's not condescending or anything, but if you don't know, you don't know. Yeah, it's like, so we said, no, I mean, yeah, you could, but that wouldn't do anything. I mean, I don't think you'd even feel that,
No, not during a fight, not during a UFC fight.
So how I put it was, I said, Charlie horses are for when you're cruising and you see your friend, you're like, I'm gonna give my friend a Charlie horse, and you do it, and it like hurts him. He's like, oh, but no, when you're in fighting, like, you don't really feel a Charlie horse.
Now, that being said, if you're in a position and somebody starts dropping 12 to 6 elbows onto your thigh,
and they're big enough.
And they're big, and you're kind of stuck there. You'll feel those. After and you'll see a guy, even in the UFC, you'll see a guy make adjustments and move because he doesn't want to take 12 of those shots. That's not going to be fun.
Yeah, my example was a leg kick. So a leg kick is essentially can be like a Charlie horse. You know how like you
It
give
can
your
be
friend
like
a Charlie horse.
really gnarly Charlie
exactly
horse,
right,
though.
and that's the point.
Yeah.
The point is like what you would think is a common Charlie horse, like with your friend or at school or whatever, like like an elbow where you punch it or even you knee it or whatever. Is different than like the kind of Charlie horse that will be effective in.
Yeah, but in a fight, in an MMA, it takes even 99% of the time with leg kicks, it does take multiple. It takes rounds worth of leg kicks before you can actually affect the guy. It might slow the guy down a little bit. He's a little less apt to have weight on that front leg or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then you see there's been fights that have ended because third or fourth round the guy's been kicked in the leg 47 times and it's just easy. He breaks. Yeah.
It's just again, just one of those things. Like if you don't know, you don't know. You think true. That's how it is, and then get updated information.
Yeah, there's much in the world that looks like that. Mm-hmm. That if you don't know, it seems like it'd be easy. Yeah, and it's not easy. And jiu-jitsu is a classic, or MMA is a classic example of that. But there's so many things. I mean, even a normal sport. Baseball. Yep. Hey, how hard can it be to hit that ball?
All sports, actually.
yeah, all sports. Rock climbing. You look and say, dude, why don't you just grab that thing right there?
Yeah,
no.
Just hold on.
Yeah, just hold on. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Football, like, when they drop the ball, it's like, oh my gosh, you couldn't even catch that ball right in his hands. Okay, so Trey, you're a football now. Of course, they're trained to understand, but that's kind of part of the point, them being trained made it look like it's so easy. You've seen it done all those times.
And what's interesting is when this transfers over into the interpersonal and the leadership realm. Yeah. And it's the same exact thing where if you don't know, you don't know. Mm-hmm. And you see people that are, younger leaders or they're not very experienced and they'll be making the same kind of rookie mistakes or have the same kind of opinion. Why don't we just tell them to do this? Oh, it's very easy. Why you can't tell them, just tell them to do that. You just tell them to do that, they're just not going to listen to you because they don't have respect for you because you don't have a relationship with you and you haven't built anything up yet. And so you can end up with the same thing in that aspect of life as you do in a war fighting aspect of life, as you do in a sports aspect of life. It's all the same. Yeah. Huh. You got to learn the skills. You got to practice the skills.
Yeah, it's true. Even like shooting a gun.
Yeah. Oh, super easy, right?
Yeah.
Let's see somebody knock out. It's a skill. I mean, it's easier. It's obviously easier to kill someone with a gun than it is with a knife or with your bare hands. It's an easier method. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you see this all the time. You see little gunfights where people shoot 20, 25 rounds at another guy and they don't hit him. Yeah. And they're only 10 feet away, So shooting is easier, but it still is a skill that you need to practice.
I know, man. And that's not to mention just all the input they just firing it. Like on movies, the guy will be like one hand, whatever, boom, 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 boom. A more accurate representation of how it would go is like, the kind of movies where the girl, they just totally demean women a lot of the times when the girl grabs the gun and she's like, and she shoots it and then like it flies out of her hand.
Oh yeah.
That's probably pretty accurate if you never shot a gun.
Well, yeah, if someone's never shot a gun before. Yeah. The first time I ever took my wife to a range to teach her shooting, and she was kind of that way, kind of scared and intimidated, and she was kind of almost shaking a little bit. Mm. And a half an hour later, I had her doing quick draws from the holster, gunning down targets. I said, yeah, you're over it now, aren't you? She says, shut up and reload my magazine. I'm like, okay, cool. We got this.
Yeah. You ever seen those videos online? I mean, I don't know how much time you spend watching videos online, but they're more just for entertainment. But of people like shooting like big guns at it. Like,
and it hits them.
It hits them in the face and stuff.
Yeah, those are good. Yeah. If I'm going to spend time watching videos, I'm watching actually guys that are good, that have some knowledge to put out on shooting.
Right. Stuff you can learn. Gotcha.
So check. Although you can learn from watching somebody get hit in the face with a shotgun when they shoot it wrong. All right, awesome.
Next question. I had a few questions relating to my family life for guys who join the SEALs. My boyfriend is interested in taking the pass. So this is coming from the girl.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Jocko, you have mentioned being married while a SEAL. Was it hard on you and your wife and family? Advice for a newlywed SOF candidate.
That stands for SOF, Special Operations Forces.
There you go.
So this was two questions, and basically from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, everyone that's asked, can I bring my wife on here? My wife has given the stern negative. She's not coming. You know why? Because she's a legit quiet professional. She's just a legit quiet professional. She doesn't want any of this glory.
Yeah.
No, she did it just because she loves the job. So my wife has said no, and someone said, I said, went back and forth with somebody on social media, and they said, hey, flank her. Hey man, she knows this game, bro. She's not gonna get flanked. It's super easy. But what I'm doing is kind of playing a long-term game. I'm planting some seeds and whatnot, trying to get her maybe to think about how she could help some other folks out there.
Right.
So, we're trying to work through.
Yeah.
There is some flanking activity going on. We're going to see where it goes. But to this question, being married to a guy that's in special operations or in the SEAL teams or whatever, it is a hard life in many ways. And, the SEAL teams, we had a 90% divorce rate. By the way, a 90, and I think it's come down a little bit. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know what the current numbers are to date, but man, when I was a young kid, everybody was divorced. Guys were just getting married and divorced all the time. So here's the couple things that I would tell you that I think made my marriage last, right? Aside from my wife being awesome, of course, right? Full credit. But here's a couple things. Number one, you have to respect the fact that the job is the number one priority. And that is completely different from what a lot of people think. And I don't mean to be offensive by saying that, but the job has to be number one. And for me, and I've said this before on interviews, the job was the most important thing to me. And my wife didn't take offense to that. She didn't, when I said, hey, I'm going to work, but it's Saturday, doesn't matter. I'm not going to be coming home tonight. Why? I'm going to work. And then I'm going out with my friends because we're going to go and hang out because that's what we do.
Yep.
And she never would get offended by that. Instead, she realized, okay, yeah, his job is the most important thing. He's got to take care of himself. He's got to take care of his guys. He's got to take care of his job. He's got to take care of the country. So I am number two. That's cool. You know what I need to do is help support him. And so that is what was happening. And so what that means is your wife, in this case, you, young lady that's asking this question, you need to be an independent person, right? You need to be self-sufficient. And that's not just self-sufficient with, being able to clear the toilet when it gets clogged up and, call the plumber when the water heater breaks and handle all that administrative stuff and all the tasks around the house and provide, take care of the finances because your husband's gonna be gone. He's gonna be gone. He's gonna be on a workup. He's gonna be gone a lot. And so you got to be able to handle all that stuff. And on top of that, you have to be self-sufficient emotionally self-sufficient where you don't need to have this constant flow of affection coming from this guy who has a bunch of other things to worry about.
Yeah.
Right? So that's hard to do. And it's hard. I think that's one of the problems. I mean, that's why there's probably a high divorce rate because it's hard to find a girl or a woman that can do those things.
Yeah.
Right? So it's that will make, that's part of the solution here. Now the husband, obviously, big things you got to do is leave your job at work, right? And don't bring it home with you. And I've talked about this before, in the SEAL teams, you don't have to, when you get done with work, you change, you put on your civilian clothes, you go home. So you're not bringing that with you. That's sort of a psychological moment to change and get those out. But there's also the attitude that you can carry over very easily because the SEAL teams and special operations in the military in general, but definitely the SEAL teams, is a hostile environment with your friends. Your friends are not supportive, caring, nurturing friends. No. Your friends are just savages, right? Yeah. Everything, they're looking for weakness. It's all fun, but it's all just a constant just battle, verbal abuse all day long. It's fun. Like, we're having fun with it That's the sick sense of humor, when Tim Kennedy was on here and they made that movie Range 15, and all that like kind of sick, twisted sense of humor is what you're living in. Mm-hmm. And there's a real problem that occurs when you take that little sick sense of humor and that abusive personality that you develop at work and you bring it home.
Yeah.
And that happened to me when I went to college, and all of a sudden I wasn't around any team guys anymore. All day long, no more team guys. And then here I am. And what do I do now? I come home from going to school all day, which was annoying. And then the first person I talked to, because I didn't talk to anyone when I went to school, unless I was asking them a specific question about some knowledge or some thing that was happening in a class. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I didn't make any friends. So I'd come home and I want to socialize. What was the only way I knew how to socialize with people? Cutting them down, abusing them. Yeah. And that's a little bit strong, but, definitely making comments and trying to have a good time through cutting people down. Yeah. And so, and I've talked about this before. I think somebody's kind of grabbed onto this, but, for instance, before I was going to college, when I was just in the teams, my wife would make dinner, whatever it is. She makes it. Hey, cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. When I was going to school, all of a sudden I'm not around team guys anymore. I want to have some fun when I come home. And, she'd cook me something and I would have some comments about it, right? And eventually, and it was very clear when she said this to me, she didn't think a big deal. She just goes, hey, I'm not a team guy,
Right.
I think I said something about this dried chicken that she made. My wife has always had some issues getting moist chicken made, right? It always, I don't know, she's paranoid about food poisoning, but when she cooks it, man, she cooks it big time. I mean, she goes the distance, right? She will cook that thing until, you got to bring a gallon of water to the table just to get through the meal. So she's actually gotten a lot better in the recent years. Yeah, man. So anyways, back in the day, she'd say, oh, I made you some chicken. And I'd say, oh, can you just go ahead and bring me 3 gallons of water to the table? And then it was one of those comments that I made one time where she says, I'm not a team guy. Mm. And I kind of laughed and I said, oh my gosh, look what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm treating her like a team guy, and she's not a team guy, and she doesn't need to be treated like that. So I just put myself in check and got myself under control and treated my wife like the good person that she is. So there's that. There's communication. And this is a weird thing because everyone's going to say communication, but my point here is don't expect communication, right? Don't expect communication. One of my buddies was married, and we were going on deployment. This is a long time ago. He was married. He had three kids, been married to, married his high school sweetheart, blah, blah, blah. And he lived in Coronado where the SEAL teams are. He lived there. And he lived there with his wife. And one day he dropped off his car. He had to get his car worked on or something like that. And he said, we'd been at the SEAL teams for 5 years. He's married the whole time, been at SEAL Team 1. And one time he says to his wife, hey, he calls her and says, hey, can you come pick me up? Because we got to go somewhere, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, yeah. She says, where are you? He goes, I'm at the team. And she goes, where is it? And Coronado, by the way, is only like a mile long. Yeah. And so it was a classic example of he never told his wife even where the buildings were or what he did or anything like that. And that's just the way it was. And a lot of successful SEAL marriages that I've seen, there's not a lot of, hey, this is what I did at work today, and hey, this guy's a jerk, and hey, we're trying to make this happen, and hey, I got in trouble for this. There's none of that. There's just like work, and then there's what we have, right? And I think that you got to separate those two. But what I'm saying is this idea of communication happening all the time, it's not going to happen all the time. It's not going to, and I don't even know I don't think it's beneficial. When I was overseas, I wouldn't call you could call your wife, basically every day if you wanted to. I didn't call my wife every single day. I don't want to call my wife every day. It makes time slow down. It doesn't speed it up. Just don't call. Call like once a week. That's what I did. Call my wife once a week. Hey, how you doing? I'm fine. How's everything at home? I would just ask her questions about home. Didn't tell her anything that was going on ever, and just said, "Oh yeah, how's this? Oh yeah, did you get the how's the car, and did you get the water heater fixed, and how's the kids doing in school, and blah 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 blah." Ask her questions, because otherwise you're going to start talking about your world, and then that's going to make them worried and concerned and everything else, and you don't want that. So you don't need to talk to somebody every single day. That's neediness. That's emotional that's what I was talking about earlier with being emotionally independent, right? You got to be independent. You can't need that like security of, hey, call me and talk to me.
Right,
no, actually, I'm not going to call you. I'm not going to talk to you. You go do your thing. I'm doing my thing. On top of that, I think it's cool if you want to set some goals, together, make a little team, you're trying to make some things happen. You're trying to make some financial goals or some family goals or some house goals. We want to get new carpet, want to put some new wallpaper up, whatever, want to add just do stuff and make those goals. Maybe we make some jiu-jitsu goals together. That's always good. My wife was really good at jiu-jitsu. She's kind of stopped training when she started having babies every 18 months and all that. Sure. But we used to have a blast training jiu-jitsu all the time. Yeah. So I obviously recommend the jiu-jitsu to help all relationships.
Yeah. Fully.
Working out together is another good one. Even if you can't get the jiu-jitsu together, you can just work out together. Yeah. And that's cool. And then you got to give each other some space. Right? Got to give each other some space. The guy, he's a team guy. He's a special operations guy. He's going to hang with his friends sometimes. And that's the way it goes. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the way things work. And you know what? She's going to go do the same thing. So that's okay. Yeah. So I think those are the main things. JP, when JP was on here, he made a good point of put each other first, right? That was pretty simple point. Yep. That goes a long way. Yep. That goes a long way.
Yeah.
Which is contrary to what I said, which is like the team is going to come first. Yeah. But that's your job. Yeah. And I think you can still put your team as the number one priority and doing your job as your number one priority. Because that's the thing. I said this a million times, right? Hey, listen, darling. The reason I have to do my job well is because this is what we do. We fight and guys are going to be trying to kill us. So the best thing I can do for our relationship is stay alive. Yeah. So that means, and not only that, but I got these guys that also need to stay alive for their wives. So we're going to work hard. We're going to train hard. We're going to play hard. We're going to know each other better. We're going to bond, and all those things are going to happen. And that's how I can best support this family, is by kicking ass at my job. And if you're a smart wife, you'll go, that makes sense to me. Yeah. And it'll be okay. So in putting your job as the number one priority, you're actually supporting the family, and you're putting your spouse first, because you're trying to take care of yourself, take care of your team, so that you can come home when it's time to come home.
Yeah. Yeah, JP made it. I mean, the put each other first. That's kind of like dated. It's like you got to remember that, Because you know how if you're on two different pages,
Oh yeah, you gotta remind yourself daily.
Yeah, but man, it helps. It helps a lot.
Have you been doing that lately?
I liked how JP put it. We just put each other first. It's real. Dang, that kind of resonated. I don't like using that word, but it resonated.
Why don't you like using that word?
I don't know. Those words. Certain words just sound dumb coming out of your mouth.
Is that one of them?
In my opinion, yes.
It sounds out of anyone's mouth?
No, out of my...
I think that sounded pretty good, actually.
Oh, thanks, Paul.
All right.
But yeah, that was a good one.
Good luck. By the way, good luck to these guys that are trying to get in the special operations community. Obviously, I loved it, and it was awesome for me. And I'll tell you, my wife, that was definitely hard, man. It's a hard path. And when your husband's over on deployment and you're home and guys are coming home wounded or guys are getting killed overseas, that's hard. And that's one of the things that I talk about, the strength of the spouses and the independence, and to be able to deal with those hardships when they come. That's real stuff. And so to the women out there that support these guys, God bless you.
Yeah, that point you made where you I think it's probably just habitually a little bit when you treat your wife like a team guy, like how, because that's how you're used to bonding with people you like, So in a way, it's it's good. Yeah. I treat you like good. Yeah, man, it's not a one-way street, man. No. You can't be doing that. I had the same thing, because that's how me and my brother, we just that's it. The whole thing is so you ridicule. Can make the funniest joke about the other guy, you know. And then, so Sarah was like our friend before we got together. So she kind of, and she didn't like that even from the beginning. But once you're kind of in the relationship, she kind of got a lot of it. And she'd constantly Like, I'm not your, and of course,
I'm not your brother.
yeah, I'm not your
Boom.
brother. I'm not your friend. Like that kind. But of course, if you're not looking at it as like a two-way street, you're like, wait, you should be happy I'm treating you like this,
This
Like-
is my way of showing affection.
Exactly right. You should be happy, right? No. That's a different person you're
Yeah.
talking about,
Yeah.
Anyway, next question. BJJ question 1. BJJQ1? I don't know.
It does mean question 1, yes.
There you go. What's the best ratio of drilling to sparring? And question 2 is, what do you do if you roll with someone new to jiu-jitsu and they're over aggressive, like the beast took over and they want to hurt people? I don't think they really do, but the adrenaline rush takes experience to manage. What's a good approach on the mat to let them know that they're being reckless and wasting energy without sounding like a douche?
All right. So question 1, the ratio of drilling to sparring. I'm probably not the best person to ask this question because I like to roll.
Nobody's the best person to ask that question.
Maybe, but I like to roll, and I should probably drill more, but I like to roll. The rolling is the funnest thing. We were training yesterday, and we got done training yesterday, and we were sitting there, we were watching some other people train and stuff, and I was like, man, I just love jiu-jitsu. It's so fun. Well, we do an hour of rounds, and so I just got done, and I said, man, jiu-jitsu is so fun. It's so fun. And so I like to roll. And drilling is not as fun, right? When I said, we did rounds, that means we were just rolling. For those of you that don't train, well, first of all, go train. Go find a place to train. And by the way, all these people that ask me questions about if they should train or not, yes, you should train. Yeah. You got a million different reasons why you shouldn't train. Like, what was the one you just responded to somebody on social media that said, hey, what if the only option I have is a place where there's just white belts?
All white belts, even the instructor.
Even the instructor's a white belt. Is it worth it? Yes.
Yeah.
It's worth it. Go on YouTube. You can learn a billion different moves on YouTube and go start rolling with these other white belts, and you guys are all going to get better. And it doesn't matter what the belts are. So, whether you're that person or whether you're the person that says, hey, I can only make it once a week because I travel, go once a week then.
There you go.
If you're the person that says, hey, man, I got, this knee injury and I can only roll like one day before it gets too sore. Okay, roll one day. And you know what? If you can't, doesn't mean you have to. Every time you get on the mat, you don't have to go psycho. Yeah. Right? Which is what I guess we'll get to that question. But if you can't roll super hard, then just roll a little lighter and roll what you can. And we get guys, some of our really dedicated jiu-jitsu guys, they get hurt, they still come and train. Yep. Mm-hmm. They can't even roll, but they'll come in, hey man, let me just work my whatever I can do. Let me work my arm lock. That's the one motion I can do, so I'm going to work that. And that's cool. So I think you should drill more. I think I should drill more, but I just like to roll so much. And I'll tell you, I think this does change a little as you get better because obviously a black belt doesn't need to drill as much as a white belt does because a white belt has a lot more moves to learn. Mm-hmm. But everybody should drill more. And I think if I was to say something like probably a third of the time you should be drilling, maybe. I'll tell you something else. You learn a new move, drill it until you're good at it. Then you won't need to drill it anymore. Yeah. And the other thing about drilling is, and drilling is awesome, drilling also, I could drill a move 15,000 times, drill only, and when I go to roll with somebody, I won't be able to do it. Yep. It doesn't mean you'll be able to do it. Yep. In fact, I still got to do it 100 more times live against another real active human before I can pull the move off. That's the way it works. Yep. Occasionally, there's a few moves that either they are that simple or you have a natural ability to do them. That does happen sometimes where, like, occasionally there's some moves that just make sense to me, right? And I've always, as soon as I learn them, I can do them. Yeah. That's rare. It's that happens 10% of the time. Most of the time, I learn something and I try it and I get stuffed and then I got to try it again. And I got to make my own little adjustments to it and then I got to do it again. And then that's the way jiu-jitsu works. Mm-hmm. So drill a bunch. All right. Question 2. Someone that is going level 7 psychopath on the mats.
Is 7 the highest level? 10, right?
I guess.
But 7 is still pretty
We're
high.
not 100% sure what the highest level is. I don't think it's been seen yet.
It's not level 1. That's
it's definitely not level 1. This guy is above normal psycho level. I'll say this, well above normal psycho level. Okay. So, first of all, if you're a higher belt, you just shut them down, right? You just shut them down, smother them. I like to, if I get someone that's going really super crazy, I will immobilize them. to where they cannot move. And I will let the rage drain out of them.
Yeah.
I'll just let it drain out of them. And I'll, just let the rage drain out. And then I'll submit them. And then I'll submit them again. And I'll just do that over and over again. And then I'll probably just, have a little chat with them. Like, hey, man, you just relax a little bit. Because all that going crazy is not helping you get better at what we're trying to do here. Mm-hmm. Now, when you tell somebody to relax, you tell them don't use strength. Of course, those are the things that no one can actually apply, right? Mm-hmm. Very seldom can someone say, I can say, hey, man, just relax. And they go, oh, okay, cool. And you have a nice roll with them. No, it doesn't happen. They go even harder.
Yeah. Well.
So that's what you're going to do. You eventually just keep wearing them down and say, hey, man, I'm telling you got to relax. You're not going to see as much if you're so going psycho. Mm-hmm. Now, so that's if you're a higher belt. That's what I do. Control them, put them, force them to accept their fate, and that will help them move down the path towards relaxation. Now, if you're a lower belt, you can either fight to the death, which is fine, and kind of join in their mayhem. And if you want to do that, that's okay. Or you can work your technique, right, and get dominated. So guy comes in, and he, you two are about the same level, but he's a lot stronger than you, and he's going crazy, and you just go, okay, you know what? I'm just going to work my technique the best I can, and I'm not going to escalate this. Mm-hmm. And you know what? You're going to get tapped out because you guys are at the same level, but he's using all the strength, and you're not. Now you're going to get better at jiu-jitsu, but you're not going to notice that for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
So what happens? You get caught up in their ego trip and you start going just as hard as they're going, and that's the way it works. Now, if you can just say, you know what, I'm just going to keep relaxing with this guy, and eventually I'm going to learn more than him, and that will happen. You will learn more than the person that's going psycho, and then you can put them to tap. So, also as I was, Tim Ferriss sent some email out the other day, and it had a quote on there from Leo Tolstoy, and it said, everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. Right? And I was like, that's interesting. And I immediately thought of jiu-jitsu, because I try and explain this concept to people in jiu-jitsu, and that is, when you're going, especially against someone that's bigger than you or stronger than you, or someone that's going crazy and they're using all of their muscles, the way this translates in jiu-jitsu is, in jiu-jitsu, everyone thinks of moving the other person, but what you need to focus on is moving yourself. Yeah. And there's some really clear examples of this, but this is just translates into life. It translates into life, this is what flanking is, right? If I come up against you and you got a big ego and you're not budging on anything, I'm not going to continue to attack that way. I'm not going to try and move you. I'm going to move myself into a better position. So I thought that was a good thing to think about when you're rolling with somebody that's big and going crazy.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good thing to think about all day, every day, about everything. Especially, people who are like, hey, oh man, I need a job. And that's nothing. This is nothing new where it's, dang, I need a job, dang, there's no jobs out here or whatever. And that's kind of an example of that, where don't look at it like a job needs to be presented to you, you have to kind of,
you need to maneuver.
Yeah. Change yourself. So, you can do the work that people need,
Concur. Don't move the world, move yourself. Don't try and move your opponent, move yourself.
Yeah. The guy, or drilling and sparring.
You were kind of trying to move me a lot yesterday, FYI.
Oh, I moved you a lot.
You were trying to move me a lot.
Whatever.
You were coming with a really aggressive methodology, I'll say.
Yeah. Default.
The default aggressive.
The drilling, in my experience, if you ask different people,
I thought you were getting frustrated.
I was.
And I saw, I was like, okay, he's getting frustrated. And I thought to myself, he's getting frustrated at me.
Yep.
And the reason I was like, I almost fell into your game psychologically, because as we're rolling and you're getting more and more frustrated, so you're being more aggressive. And it seemed to me, part of your frustration and your aggression was that I was not fully disengaging, but I was not getting into this game that you were in. And as I saw that you were going to keep coming with this, and I said, well, I don't want him to get frustrated, at me. So maybe I'll play this a little bit. And then I said, oh wait, I'm truly actually doing jiu-jitsu, right? Yep. I'm doing jiu-jitsu. I'm just straight doing jiu-jitsu. I'm totally not getting into this headbanging competition. No, I'm gonna be over here.
Yep.
I'm gonna be over here. So I thought that was.
Isn't that kind of not whack? It's actually really good how that worked, because if you remember, I kind of started to lose it mentally, not like temper-wise or nothing, but like bit. Basically there's like a little small short list. I don't know if you know this. I've mentioned this, but not in this depth. There's a small list of things that I'm working on with you. There's mm-hmm. like a small thing, like where if I can remember to do this, because you're the kind where like to defend a certain thing, you got to focus really hard in defending it. Mm-hmm. But the drawback to that is when you start like really focusing on defending it, all it takes is one little, So there's like a few things that it's like, dang, it's like a balancing act. I don't want to forget here. So it's like that. And a lot of times, and it's by my own evaluation. It's mm-hmm. not based on like, it's in my own head. Like, okay, like I feel good about this is coming along, kind of thing. And whether you notice this or not, towards the end, like it might, like it was just gone. My whole thing, it was just gone. Yeah, it was all just blind rage, I think.
And that's what I was truly thinking. Yeah. I was thinking he's getting mad at me, but I'm really doing actual the purest form of jiu-jitsu, which is, hey, you keep coming with all that, and I'm just gonna keep adjusting and making other things happen. Yeah, that like you don't like.
It's like this cycle,
Oh, that was fun.
But yeah, it was good though. Overall, thinking back. Yeah. The drilling. Different people have different philosophies on drilling. Yep. And because I mean, like surfing, like okay, when you drill a move, it's like, hey, do the armbar. Do the whole transition to the armbar, and just drill that. When you first learn the armbar, it's gonna have more value because you have to just know the fundamental movements of the armbar. And just like how you said, like it's going to be different when you
do it live.
Yeah. So once you kind of get the fundamental movement of the armbar, your legs got to be here. They got to do this certain thing. Your arms position, his thumb, all that stuff. Once you kind of get that down, it's like then you step into the value being. Now you got to know when to do it, how to do it.
I don't know if I've ever said this before on the podcast. I've said it when I teach jiu-jitsu, and this is something I say. Okay, there's, let's say, 10 things that you have to do right to make a move work. Mm-hmm. Okay? 10, you got to put your arms here, you got to put your hips here, you got to put your grip here, whatever those 10 things are that you got to do. Mm-hmm. I can teach you about 4 of them. Yeah. Okay? Maybe I can teach you 5. Maybe Jeff Glover or Dean or a good instructor can teach you 6 or 7, maybe even 8 of those components. Mm-hmm. There's 2 more components you're only going to figure out on your own. Yeah. You're only going to figure out where to distribute your weight by yourself. You're only going to distribute how to time what the execution of the move is by yourself. You're only going to figure out how to feel what the other person and when they're vulnerable to the move. You're only going to get those by doing it live. Only going to be getting it by doing it live. So those are the components. And there's more than 10 actually. There's probably 80
that's what I was
little components that you have to do. And what's cool is when you really focus on a particular move, you have all these components just lock solid. And when someone's really good at a certain move, they just like they've been in that situation so many times. Yeah. They've been in that situation so many times that it doesn't matter. You're doing something, they already thought of that. They've been in that position. Like there's a position in jiu-jitsu, for those of you that don't know, there's a position in jiu-jitsu called 50-50, which we originally called kakareko, which Dean kind of, I would say, started because he did it in ADCC in 2003. And it was a position that we were doing all the time at that time, but no one else was doing it. Mm-hmm. And now a bunch of people do it. Ryan Hall's made it famous, and he's the one, I think I don't know who coined the phrase 50-50, but he's got an academy called 50-50.
Yeah, been there. It's good.
Nice. So, but it's a position where you're fairly neutral. Your leg positions are neutral. So you have the same leg position. And so it's who knows the position better will win. Mm-hmm. And so this position that they call 50-50 now, which we used to call kakareko, it's actually, Dean calls it 90-10. Meaning, hey,
He knows 90.
I have a 90% chance here. You have a 10% chance because I've spent months sitting in this position. So when you get someone that really knows a position well, that puts you at a massive disadvantage if you're going against them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you guys both know the drilling part of it,
Right.
But
Right.
he knows
the
the 1 million different other elements
things
in like surfing. When you first take surfing, they're like, hey, let's do it on the sand. When there's it's just that's basically drilling.
Oh yeah, you're drilling,
then,
standing up and paddling.
Then you got to go out to the actual waves, and man, the waves, that's it's different.
It's a little different.
Just way different.
And again, these principles from jiu-jitsu, they apply to everything that you're doing. And when you're going through a leadership situation, if you've seen it before, if you've seen this kind of person's attitude, like I just told that story about, hey, you'd see a guy that's learned something. The first way he learned it in the SEAL teams is the way he believes it should always be. Mm-hmm. Once I had experienced that, it was much easier for me to handle.
Yeah.
So anytime you can open up your mind and pay attention to what's going on around you, it's going to make you better at handling all these different situations that you come across in any environment. It's absolutely a leadership environment. You get the person with the giant ego. You get the person that wants to take over. You get the person that's scared to step up. You get all those things. You get someone that's being disrespectful. How are you going to, I've had that before. Let's just go, let me approach it. You know what I mean? So the more you get to handle these different positions, or the more you can research them and drill them, because the drilling does pay off. Yeah. That's what all this gathering of trying to gather knowledge from various books. And when you see something in a military situation, like I see all these things in a military situation, I go, oh, okay. Oh, I see what they did here. Oh, I see what Hackworth did here. I see what Patton did here. Now, I'm no Patton. I'm no Hackworth. But at least I have a heads up.
Yeah.
At least I've seen the scenario before. I've gone through a mental drill of how it got handled. Now, there's components that I need to figure out on my own. Yeah. But I've got the bulk of the move there.
Yeah.
I recognize what's happening. It puts me in a little better situation than having no idea what's happening and just getting flanked.
Potentially. Yeah.
Very potentially.
And the guy getting nuts, rolling, the spaz is the name for that guy, by the way. It's a spaz.
Yeah. White belt warrior.
Yeah, sure. There's that. I think that's overall just kind of part of the game. There's so many different ways to deal with. I mean, as a higher belt, I mean, you kind of, I mean, I don't think you have the curse of knowledge, but you've been a high belt for a long time. So
are you talking about me personally as an individual?
Yeah. So when you get a guy who's when you first start, my memories of first starting and going with big strong guys who are getting nuts, it is hard to deal with, man, straight up. So, and if you're smaller, it's even harder. And you could go, oh man, jiu-jitsu doesn't work, right? If you're a blue belt and you get if you're a 160 pound blue belt and a 300 or a 280 pound college wrestler comes in, and it's his first day, you're not going to be able to handle. There's a very good chance you might be able to catch him. Yeah. But it's no guarantee. No, it's unlikely to. I mean,
yeah, it's hardcore.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's part.
But you might be able to slap a little guillotine on.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a blue belt, maybe a little challenging. Purple belt, purple belt.
Yeah. You start to
different ball game.
See the holes.
Yeah.
But those if you're, and I'm just completely speaking just from experience and thinking of it right now, but there are little things that you'll see come forward, like little tactics you can use to someone who's just bigger, stronger, and spazzing. Mm-hmm. Little tactics and not to say that you'll end up tapping them out or whatever, but certain things that will be successful in your situation. So all you do is you kind of remember those things, kind of work on that, and wait till you see the next little thing. Okay. And then after a while, as your game develops, it'll be like, oh shoot, you have this handful of things that works on these types of guys.
Yeah. Glover. He does best against. He goes, guys that are big and strong are sort of his game matches really well against them, against Jeff. Yeah, because he's just so fluid.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right,
Jocko. Like yourself, I tend to have low opinions / expectations of people. My question is, how do you act friendly with someone when you know they're trying to play passive aggressive power games with you? Say you know a person and you know he's a snake, but social and work situations demands and expects that you act like their friend. How do you reconcile that within your mind? Is that not being fake? I know you're gonna say play the game, but But do I really have to play these snake games just to get ahead in the world?
All right. So first of all, from the first part of that, this blanket statement that I have a low opinion of people is actually factually not true. I don't come out of the gate with a low opinion of people. That's actually not true. I have high hopes for people that they're going to do well, but I don't have expectations that they're going to perform. There's a difference there, right? Mm-hmm. I don't view people in a low. My opinion of people is not low out of the gate, but I don't layer heavy expectations on them because that's unfair.
Right.
So that's number one. I set the bar low so people can pleasantly surprise me, but believe me, I don't have a low expectation or a low opinion of people. Now, the question, yes, you absolutely called it and what I was going to say. Play the game. Right? Yeah, yes, that's what you're going to do. Now, let me put it this way. You got snakes. Okay? If you don't learn to play with the snakes, you're never going to get the anti-venom from their fangs. Right? You're never going to get them figured out. And if you don't figure out how to get the anti-venom, the snakes are always going to own you. So you got to learn how to deal with snakes. I had a kid when I was at Team 2, kid from Arkansas or something. And we were out in the hills somewhere, and there was a rattlesnake. And he grabbed that thing like he was picking up a pair of socks. Mm-hmm. It was like no factor. Boom, walked over, picked up the snake, whacked it against the tree. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, this dude knows how to deal with snakes. Yeah. And it's the same thing here. People are snakes. Does that mean you just avoid them and you're not going to play the game? And the worst thing, you know what you don't do with a snake? Is you don't walk over and get all, like, intimidate them and get in their face, and so it bites you and poisons you, right? So, yes, you got to play the game. People like this exist, right? And so let's say you take the moral high ground and you refuse to work with and accept and be humane with these snakes, okay? If that's what you do, now, guess what? Now the snakes don't like you. Now they see you as a threat, and now they attack. And like I said, this is when they bite and they poison and they kill you. And what good are you now? You're dead. So you can't help anybody when you're dead. You can't achieve your goals. You can't help the team. You can't accomplish the mission because you are on the moral high ground. Now, let's say that you learn to play the game. You learn how to handle those snakes like that young boy from Arkansas. You learn their moves. You get the antidote. You get the anti-venom for their poison. And you actually, in this process, you become immune to their attacks. And you reach a point where they actually don't attack you because they're familiar with you. And they trust you. And when that happens, then you can overcome their weapons. You can rise up. You can get control of them. And you can utilize them for your own purpose, right? Now, if that purpose was something that was self-centered or something that was for your own good and not for them or not for the team, then it'd be a form of manipulation and it'd be pretty negative. But if all you're doing is trying to get these snakes on board with the program to help the whole team win, we got no issue with that. We got no moral issue with that. I got no moral issue with me treating people nicely to try and get them on board with the program so that they can help our team win. I got no issue with that, moral or otherwise. So that's the answer, I think. You know, when the time is right, you be nice to those snakes. When the time is right, you put that little stick with the noose around the end of it. You put it around their head and you collect their venom. And you can use snakes to do things like kill rats, right? Snakes can be used for some kind of good at some point. Now, I know it's hard, right? I know it's hard. And is it being fake? Maybe it is. Maybe that is being fake. But you're doing it for the good of the team. So again, it's not for personal gain. That's a huge difference. And also, if you think about this idea of being fake, if you would be nice to people to help the team win, then isn't that actually you? Right? So how can you be fake by being you? right? If what I do is, hey, I help people and I get in their head and I'll be nice to them so we can win. If I do that, that's me. That's not being fake. That's actually what I do. That's not being fake. So I think regardless, in the end, it is something you have to do. You do have to play the game. And that is how you're going to help your team win. And it's also, if you want to get those snakes to come over to the light and get away from the darkness, you're not going to do it by trying to kill them. All you're going to do is offend them and they're going to attack you. Like I said, if you show them a good example, if you're productive, and when you get all that stuff done and you accomplish your mission, and what you do is you say, hey, it wasn't me that accomplished the mission. It was the snakes. They did it. You know what? Those snakes start to stand upright. They start to defang themselves, and they start to realize that maybe they can do some good out there too.
I like the snake analogy.
Hey, he started it.
Yeah. That
commentary.
Like
Go.
No. What you're saying, you know how you slowly build that relationship, whatever.
Yep.
That part's hard because it takes like time.
It takes time, but harder than time is it takes the stomach. Right?
Yeah,
exactly. You got the guy that you know is a slimy guy that's just looking out for himself. So you got to go, hey, man, what's going on?
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, what's happening?
Yep.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, no. Good. Yeah, I had a great weekend. Thank you. Yeah, how was your weekend?
Yeah.
You know, so you're in that mode and you got to gut through that.
Yep.
Because you know you're a good person, right? Right? I think. Right? I think.
Yeah, especially passive aggressive, like that can be tough because a lot of times it's way easier if I'm like if I launch a confrontation against you, it's way easier mentally to be like, okay, we're in a little battle right now, it's easy. But if I just do like one little dig and then kind of walk away or something like that, it's like, oh man, that can be way more like trying on your mind, on your patience, you know. And then when you battle through that, right, or the idea of I gotta battle through this, okay, this is gonna be hard, just mentally, whatever. I got to battle through that. Oh, but guess what? You got to do that for a long time. That one time that you think that was hard, all right, well, you got to keep on doing that.
It's a continual seething evolution that happens over and over again. It does make it challenging.
But I think if you just know this, if you can see the light at
you know what you can do too? And I hate to use this word because it seems to be a trendy word right now. You got to gamify it a little bit. You know, when somebody does something passive aggressive to me, I'm like, score. I'm going to have fun with this. Yeah. Hey, you're right. That was a really good job that your team did over there. You know, when they say something, a little dig at me, so, yeah, I think you guys did fantastic. I didn't foresee that at all. Yeah. You're crushing it. Just I say, oh, that hurt, but guess what? I'm going to win in the long run. I just won a little battle against you. Yeah. And don't let these little things don't let the little things bother you. Man, think about the big stuff. You got big stuff to worry about out there. You can't let the little things bother you. And are you on the right path? If you're trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, man, it's all good. It doesn't matter what else is going on. I'm good with it.
And that's it. And that's what I mean by kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. Like you know, that's where I'm going. This is just part of the thing. You know, I see the whole path kind of thing, and it just makes it easier when you kind of know that. But when you're at that time, passive aggressive is the worst, man. The kind where
I see you talk about passive aggressive being the worst. This is not like this thing that bothers me. Yeah. I don't know. It's never been a big issue for me. When somebody's passive aggressive with me, I just, okay, make I see the game we're in. I'm going to play that. I'll play that game. I'm good with it.
Man, see, if you can just look at it like that. Yeah, man, it would almost make it the opposite situation. Like it would almost be pleasurable. I think it
does because I've never had a big issue with some guy that's being I've never had that. Yeah. I'm like, cool. I see it's a little shot right there. You know what? I'm going to throw some credit at him. I'm going to flank them. Yeah. They're going to be good. Not worried about that person. That person's not really secure in the first place. Right. And they're sort of one of these slimy snakes, right? That are trying to make things happen. That's okay. I'll just help them. Help them out. You know what? You're trying to be passive aggressive. I'm going to bring you out in the open. Bring you out in the clear. Not in an offensive way. Right. But you know what? I think you're right about that. Yep. I think you could do a better job here. Come on and help my team. Or whatever. Yeah. Because when they're doing that, what are they attacking?
Your ego.
They're attacking your ego. Yes. So if you just get over that thing and just say, you know what? No big deal. Yeah. That's good. Oh, I see what's going on here. Let's bring it out in the open. Yeah. Bring it out in the open. Expose the ambush and just say, hey, buddy. Oh, yeah. We're good. Let's start. Let's move forward together as a team. How's that sound? I'm down.
Dang.
Hard one to contend with.
It
for
is,
Echo
man.
Charles.
You know what? And I'm thinking about this. I'm like, yeah, that sounds so easy. But you know what? I realized it's one like I care about the person and they be passive aggressive. Like, or if I care about like their opinion or something.
Did I say
like
that you had to offend them?
No. No. It's not in that way. Not in the way where like I might offend them, but like if like you care about what they think, you know?
Okay.
And they're like,
what's wrong with that?
I guess nothing.
There's nothing.
But I guess maybe that's where my sensitivity to it is. I mean, coworkers, maybe I haven't had coworkers in a long time. Well, I guess you're a coworker, but you're not passive aggressive. But nonetheless,
I'm straight aggressive.
You're more aggressive, not passive. Maybe it would be in a situation like maybe a coworker situation would be the kind of situation that I'm like thinking about where people will be more sensitive than it's just
you know what?
person.
Actually, the other day you and I had a conversation. You might have been being passive aggressive.
No,
maybe. We were trying to do something, and you said, "Hey, I'm just not sure if this is like really something we should do." And I was like, "Cool, don't do it."
No. Oh, okay. That wasn't passive aggressive. That was like it was different. It's like trading lightly. Sugarcoat. You know, like it wasn't necessarily straight dope.
Yeah. You gave me a little bit of a indication. And
yeah, I said, understating.
I said, "Oh, there's something going on. Some kind of ambush here." I said, "Okay, come on out. We're good. Let's bring it out in the open because I'm good." It's not that. It's like I respect your opinion. Let's go with it. No factor. Make that happen.
That was good.
That's how I roll.
Yeah, passive aggressive is the kind where, if I'm mad at you for something, and then I'm like, nope, all good, but meanwhile my body language is saying, it's like that kind of stuff.
Is that even passive aggressive?
Yeah, that is what passive aggressive is. It's like, oh, it's all good, but then like little digs are indicating other stuff. It's like this weird thing. It's super whack.
Yeah. Like I said, when someone's being that with me, I'm gonna bring them all the way out. I'm gonna bring them from passive to just straight aggressive, so that we can get through it. Because I'm not going to get. That's the thing. If we're on a team, why are we going against each other?
Yeah.
What's probably at the root there is just ego situation.
Yeah,
if you can put that to rest, you're good. Hard though. Hard to put that ego in check for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, coworkers are your peers, so it's natural to kind of care what they think, even if you don't like them. I think it's just natural.
Yeah, of course. People want to do a good job and want other people to think that they're doing a good job.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. So when they start throwing jabs, it's okay. You know what? Why are they throwing a jab? Maybe you're not doing as good of a job as you thought you were, and now it's taking a little shot to your ego. So let's address it. Let's figure out what the issue is.
Yep. Yeah. Huh.
This is like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I've done this move. I've seen this move before. Rock and roll.
Next question. What is the best case you've ever heard against extreme ownership? And what's your response? Or alternatively, are there situations where extreme ownership is the wrong answer? If you've never heard an argument against, let me propose two. Okay, 1. Extreme ownership focuses too much on achieving victory through focus on strategy and tactics.
Let me, before you even go there, I got to ask that question at the muster. Yep. Is there such a thing as too much extreme ownership? And I said, well, yes, there is actually such a thing as too much extreme ownership. For instance, and I actually broke it down to the fact that there's 2 types of extreme ownership that you're going to have, internal and external. Internal is I own everything and I know that, but I'm not sitting here telling everyone, right? External is, hey guys, I'm going to own this. This is me. This is mine. So you can easily see from there where you can overplay your hand of external extreme ownership. For instance, Echo, you're in charge of this project that we're doing. I want you to do it like this because I own it. Right. Like that's obviously wrong, right? So if I'm trying to get people to do things, if I'm trying to use decentralized command and all I'm telling everyone is like, this is my project. I own it. Echo, you do this. This is your part of the project, but the project is mine, right? Does that motivate you in any way?
No.
Okay, so we're not going to do that. That would be too much extreme ownership. It would be too much outward extreme ownership. Now, what I want to do is I want to say, Echo, dude, this is your project. I'm going to step back, let you run this thing. I think you've got a really good idea and vision on how this is going to work, and I think you could actually do a better job than I can do. So here's the goal that we're trying to accomplish, and if you just, come up with a plan and tell me how you're going to execute it, I'm standing by, right? Now you're like, oh, Jocko trusting me to do this? That's pretty cool, right? Yeah, that's awesome. So now we have a good thing going. So that's where I'm going to keep my ownership internal. I'm not going to project it on you, to keep it internal. Now, where this flips is the project fails. And clearly, the example now becomes crystal clear. Because now, if I use external ownership, and I'm saying I should use external ownership. And when the boss says, hey, Jocko, your team failed on this mission, I'll say, you know what? We did. I made some mistakes here. Here's what I did wrong. Here's where we made the wrong investments. I didn't allocate resources well here. My fault. We're going to get it fixed next time around. Won't happen. Okay, that's cool. I'm now correctly using excessive extreme ownership to take ownership of the project that you actually screwed up.
Sure.
Now, obviously, the wrong thing would be, hey, Jocko, this project failed. And I say, oh, that's because Echo dropped the ball on this. He didn't get this done in time, and Echo's got issues over here. Now, that's not good. I don't want to use that. I'm keeping my ownership internal. I'm being lame, basically. So, yes, the argument against extreme ownership is, yes, if you take too much ownership of a project and you're not using enough decentralized command. That's why there's a dichotomy between those two. There's a dichotomy between extreme ownership and decentralized command. And if I use too much extreme ownership when I'm trying to execute decentralized command, it's not going to work right.
Yeah.
Now, once a mistake happens or there's failure, that's when you step in and take ownership. And by the way, you should have taken ownership all along to make sure that the project didn't fail. But these things happen. You don't win every single time. Don't care who you are. Now, he gave a couple examples. I'll let you proceed with the question, good sir.
Okay. He's going to propose 2 examples. Okay. Extreme ownership focuses too much on achieving victory through focus on strategy and tactics, but not assessing whether a war was worth fighting in the first place. For example, maybe you prioritize and execute and cover and move and institute decentralized command to become the leading buggy whip manufacturer in the country right before Henry Ford releases the Model T. Or maybe you built the tightest, sharpest, most aggressive sales team in history, but the product they're selling is preying on the weakness of poor or ignorant.
Okay. So this is fairly simple. And in the book, Extreme Ownership, I believe chapter 3 is called Believe. And that is, you got to believe in what you're doing. And part of believing in what you're doing is understand why you are doing and what you're doing and how it is beneficial in the world, right? So, for instance, both these examples would fail the test of believing in what you're doing. Yeah. They would fail the test. Anyone that was in the transportation industry at the turn of the century and would understand that the horse and buggy, was doomed when they started seeing reliable cars come out on the streets. And somebody that truly exercises extreme ownership would step up, would adapt, which is another key concept of extreme ownership, and lead the transition from buggy whips to this new technology of cars. So it's okay. It's not, you're going to step up. You got to make changes. That's part of ownership, is looking and assessing. The other example where you're leading extreme ownership, you're leading something that is preying on weak people, well, then that doesn't pass the test, right? That doesn't pass the test in believing what you're doing. Because if I'm like, hey, you know what I'm going to get out there and do? I'm going to get out there and prey on extreme people. That's what I'm going to do. Now, of course, if you have a person that's a sociopath or doesn't care about others, is only out for themselves, and they exercise extreme ownership in order to accomplish an evil mission, well, yeah, that's going to be bad, because people that take ownership of things can make things happen. And if their cause is evil, then that's going to be bad. It's going to be a bad situation. So, the thing that's inherent in extreme ownership is a true understanding of the mission and belief of the mission, and the knowledge that you're doing the right things for the right reasons, which is why these 2 examples are actually non-issues. Mm-hmm. And then he gave another example. What's example number 2?
Yeah, example number 2 is the time and focus commitments required to practice extreme ownership come at too high a cost to your family. who didn't sign up for this, didn't sign up for this
Right,
mission. And in the end, the gratification of having achieved your objective won't be worth what you've given up in your personal life. Perhaps substantial ownership, quote unquote, is a better fit for most people.
Okay, well, let's just not forget that extreme ownership is not just about business in any stretch. It's about life. And you have to own the outcome in life. And that inherently includes balancing between what you do for business and what you do with your family. Now, I'll tell you that we hear all the time about how extreme ownership actually saved marriages. Not hurts them, but saves them. And, the husband will stop blaming his wife or vice versa and look at themselves and see where they can improve. Instead of blaming your wife for what's going wrong, you say, oh, maybe it's not cool that I do this particular thing that I know annoys her, right? Take some ownership of that. They take ownership of the relationship and the problems in the relationship, and they fix them instead of making excuses or passing the blame. So extreme ownership is going to help that family. And if you listen to the podcast with JP Donnell on it, which is number 46, JP is taking ownership of his marriage, which they had actually were divorced at the time, and applied the simple laws of combat, right? Simplify, cover and move, and got his marriage back on track. And so extreme ownership is not 100% focused on business. It's focused on life. And the dichotomy is also there that I talk about all the time, that you have to balance all the opposing forces. It's a chapter in the book called The Dichotomy of Leadership, right? Mm-hmm. You got to balance these opposing forces in your world. Now, one of those opposing forces is balancing the pull of your family with the pull of your work. And yeah, you can go too far in one direction. You can go so far in one direction that you lose you can go work so hard and do such long hours that you lose your family. Mm-hmm. You can also do the opposite, where you don't do enough at work and you focus so much on your family that you lose your job. Which one of those is a good outcome? Yeah. Neither. That's why you have to balance. Neither one of those is a good outcome. Yeah. That's why you have to balance. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it's one of those things too. I've seen this happen with friends of mine that have gone on sort of a breakdown, kind of downward spiral in their life. Mm. I think this is problematic. People start having trouble with their marriage, right? And they quit their job. Mm. And they think, oh, now I'll be able to spend more time, but now all of a sudden they don't have any money. And it turns into a disaster. And I always say, look, man, think about this. Your job is how you provide for your family. So let's have a plan before we move in this direction. You got to balance. Because if you throw everything, like I just said, if you say, okay, my job's, I'm too stressed out and I'm just going to leave my job and just focus on my family, now you've got no income. You got a whole new level of stresses coming at you, because who's going to put the food on the table? Yeah.
That kind of like one guy's, they stop working out after they get married because, I got to focus on my family, my kids, and they stop working out. But, health down,
Health down. Yeah. Energy down. Yeah. You become a low energy father. We don't want that.
That's bad for everybody.
That's bad for the whole family. So, yeah, that's another thing. If you got your wife or your husband is saying, hey, you're working out all the time, or, I don't like this, say, hey, here's the benefits. Yeah. Do you want me to be around for an extended period of time? You want me to be alive past 60? Yep. Do you want me to be healthy? Do you want me to be able to defend our family should there be some kind of an encounter? Yep. I know I do want to be able to defend this family. Yep. So, I got to spend a little extra time on the gun range. Yeah, I got to spend a little extra time on the jiu-jitsu mat. Yes, I'm going to work out. I'm doing that. You think I'm doing it for me? I'm doing it for us.
For us, yeah.
I'm doing it for us. Now, of course, you got to balance that too, because you can go overboard there too.
Yeah, so
you gotta be careful.
Like, working out is not to be confused with going to the gym.
There's a huge separation there.
Yeah, so guys will go to the gym or even the jiu-jitsu mat, because let's face it, there is a big element of social. That social component in jiu-jitsu academies and stuff.
What do you mean?
When you go to jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of hanging out.
You mean talking to other humans?
Talking to other people. Yeah, your friends. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
So some people, they'll be like, hey, I'll go to jiu-jitsu. Meanwhile, new baby, whatever. Hey, I'm going to jiu-jitsu. But then they'll roll for the hour and a half, and then 3.5, 4 hours later, they'll come home and be like, hey, I was doing jujitsu. Here's the benefits. And be like, yeah, you did the jujitsu for an hour and a half. The other, for however long, you were cruising with your friends in the lounge drinking acai.
Yeah, don't do that.
So don't confuse it. Is
Don't
what I'm
confuse
saying.
the two,
Like,
yeah. You gotta have balance.
Or use it. You know how people will use it. Well, I gotta go, but meanwhile.
Yeah, that's good. And, these questions, what I liked about him is he's saying, hey, basically put the extreme ownership attitude into the UFC cage and let's see how it does in these problem examples. So I think it does all right.
Or just get your home gym,
Yeah, I definitely recommend the home gym.
Jocko, do you follow Stoicism? Did Zen practice lead to your thoughts about detachment and ego?
So I get asked these questions the other day on Twitter. And as you know, when I'm answering Twitter, I'm doing pretty terse answers because I'm answering a lot of different questions.
What is terse?
Short. So this one in particular, I remember the answer, someone said, do you follow Stoicism? Yeah. And I just wrote back, no. No, don't. And then a while later, I get, the thread back. And the guy come back and said something along the lines of like, I don't know what it is you don't agree with Stoicism. It's very similar to what you believe, or something like that. Yeah. He wasn't being a jerk. He was just like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you practice Stoicism? Mm-hmm. And here's the deal. And I'd love to come back here and tell people how learned I am. And how well-read I am about the philosophies and the ancient cultures and the Eastern religions and all matters in the world philosophical. But the fact is, I'm not. And actually, when I was a kid, and by the way, kid for me lasts a long time. I mean, kid for me goes pretty recent. I mean, 6 months ago, I kind of consider myself a kid. Yeah. But when I was a kid, the teachings of philosophers and of the ancients, that information was transmitted by academics, right? By teachers or by professors. And to be blunt and frank, when I was a kid, there was a lot of people in that realm, in the academic realm, that didn't exactly command my respect. Now, they were people that went to college. I wanted to learn from people that went to war. That's what I wanted. Now, the part that I missed was that many of the ancients were warriors, and their teachings were important. And through my own arrogance, looking at these professors and these teachers, I don't need to learn anything from that person. I'm going to go in the military. Yeah. I'm going to learn from a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps. That's what I was thinking. But the fact is, the reading and the studying and the schooling did not really lead me to any of my beliefs or values. It was life that did. It was the things I experienced that brought me to this place where I am right now, not the books that I read, not the classes that I attended. And like I said, of course, a big part of this was just my own ignorance and ego, me saying, what can these professors teach me? Mm-hmm. And that's why, footnote right now, caveat or secondary thought, everyone out there, when you have the opportunity to learn, take full advantage of it. And I know now that you can learn from anybody. You can learn from anybody. Everybody's got something to teach you. So open up your mind. And that being said, since I was too stupid and arrogant to learn from books and teachers, I had to learn from life. And as I look now, I see similarities between, again, I'll use the word beliefs, but I think that's a strong word. But I see similarities between what I think and the other philosophical thoughts throughout the ages. And I think that's I think that's actually not even partially. I think that's because there really are some universal truths for humanity and for people. And I think that if you walk the path of life and you pay attention to what's happening around you and you're exposed to joy and you're exposed to suffering and you're exposed to love and to hate and to war and to peace, I think if you have led down that path and you have followed down that path, I think that all the paths, they kind of arrive at some place that's fairly similar. And the term that they kind of use is this term of enlightenment. And again, I think that's definitely too strong of a word for what I'm trying to say, but that's sort of a broad term that captures it. But I think these paths, they all lead to a similar form of enlightenment. And I don't think it really matters what terrain you went through or what specific path you took. I think that we see that the path looks very similar. And it says the same things. When you get to the end, it says to be disciplined. It says to keep your ego in check. It says to keep things simple and work hard and tell the truth and believe in what you say and what you do and treat other people with respect. And when you start getting overwhelmed with emotions, you got to detach from those. And I think that there's things like those that are just universal truths. And I think you can find them in what the Buddha said or what Marcus Aurelius said or what the Bible says or what any number of religious or philosophical teachers. I think they're all pretty similar. And I think you can learn them from those ancients, or I think you can find them yourself. And unless you're, of course, too stubborn and arrogant to listen and hear the lessons of the past. But if you're not, I think you can get there. And that's sort of how I arrived at, again, the word is too strong, but the way I think, I'll put it to you that way. The way I think, it's where I ended up. And I didn't get too much direction along the way. And now it's really obvious. I mean, when you look at, and I'm sure we'll do Marcus Aurelius at some point, because his, Stoic sayings are awesome. And they totally match. And I wish when I would have learned about Marcus Aurelius in sophomore year in high school, I said, wow, this guy's got it together. I'm going to listen to him. He was a warrior. But I didn't do that. Why? Because the guy that was teaching me, I was saying, what this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. This guy's some teacher, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason they're called teachers, so they can teach you. But you got to be willing to listen and learn. So, I always try, and I've talked about this when we talked about the Jocko Academy, right? Having a school. I always talked about tying this thread between all this history in the world so that kids can understand what it means and where it came from. And I think that that's something that I never made those connections when I was a kid. I never made those connections in high school, Even when I was going to college. I went to college. I was pretty old when I went to college for a college student. I think I was 27, right? So I was a mature... Allegedly mature. I wasn't mature.
No.
You know what I was trying to do when I went to college? Get good grades.
Yeah.
Beat the teacher.
Right.
It was me against the teacher. The contest was grade. I'm going to beat you. Yeah. I wasn't saying, you know what? This guy really has a lot to show me. This guy really, I can learn a lot from this. I can apply this in my life. No, I wasn't saying that. Yeah. I was too stupid. I was too arrogant to say that. So what did I do? Studied hard, memorized what they told me to memorize. That's what I did. I was focused on the grade, not on the learning. Now I'll tell you, that's not an excuse for, I'm not going to worry about the grade. I'm just going to learn. No, wrong answer. Yeah. I'm saying this specifically for my kids that are probably listening to this, and they'll say like, well, Dad, I'm focused on the learning. Negative. Yeah. You focus on the learning, good. You still get your A. That's what you get. You still win. So that's, I guess, again, I'm sorry. And I think sometimes people get caught up in like it's you ever heard me talk about when I got back from my first deployment to Iraq, and we actually, when I was in TU Bruiser with Leif, we had a saying. It was a joke. It was a wee weeb, which stood for when I was in Baghdad. Right? When I was in Baghdad, because a lot of people now, everyone had done one deployment to Baghdad. And so anytime they were having any kind of a conversation, they'd say, well, when I was in Baghdad, and we go, wee weeb. So you'd get some guy, some instructor or some cadre from the training detachment that'd be like, when I was in Baghdad, we did this every time. And it's okay, it's a wee weeb, right? Because it's a way of saying, oh, look, this is confirmed in the past, and therefore it's correct, right? And I always said, man, you can't say that. You can't say wee weeb, right? You can't say when I was in Baghdad. You can't say this is the way, this is I learned. What you say should be able to stand on its own 2 feet. That's my point. So I think a lot of times people say, oh, well, Marcus Aurelius said this, or the Buddha says this, and therefore it's correct. Yeah. They very well might be correct. But let's get the argument not to use their quotes. Why don't you come up with something to stand on your own 2 feet? Yeah. Again, nothing wrong with using the guidance of the ancients, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That's brilliant. Well, from all these books, the Bible's got all kinds of things in it that are very impactful, great proverbs to live by. But you know what? Where'd they come from? And why not figure out how to use them, or how to make them stand on their own 2 feet? Where you're not just pointing to, well, it says this there. The book says this. Marcus Aurelius said that. Buddha said this other thing. No. Let's develop our not develop our own, but let's make sure we test what we're saying. We believe in what we're saying. That's how I ended up where I'm at. So, kind of a rough path to take. Some things in life you got to learn on your own, though.
Yeah. Most of the time, that's the best way. Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of things you got to learn only through experience.
Wee weeb.
When I was in Baghdad, you just like rank, just like I can't say like Echo, I outrank you, therefore you will do it this way. Yeah. Just like that, I also can't say Echo, I did it this way in the past, therefore it's the correct way to do it. Those are equally bad arguments. Yeah. Don't do them.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Especially when I first got into reading, more so than I'd hear it, I'd kind of think about that, where I could be like, hey, if I come across a situation where I'm gonna apply some knowledge that I learned, and if I'm in a situation where I gotta convey the merits of that knowledge, it does feel weird to be like, hey, the book said it this way, and more like you're just this like blind like you don't really understand the value of what you learn. You just, it said to do it,
If you have to refer to the source if I just say, oh, Echo, we need to do this way because the book said this. Right. No, that's not a good answer. What you should be saying is, I read this and here's why I see it apply, and here's what this book says, but this is where I think it, you can use it maybe to help your argument, but don't let your argument rest on this thing. Yeah. That's my opinion. Yeah. Know yourself.
I'm going to go ahead and 100% agree with you. And I was going to say, unless that book is about putting together your computer, then you just follow the book. But when you really think about it still holds up. You should understand the computer and how it works.
Yeah. I'm not going to get into that game.
Anyway. All right. Let's go one more.
Okay. Let's do it.
What do you do on the days when you're just not feeling it?
Those days. Those days when I'm tired or worn out or just basically sick of the grind. What do I do on those days? I go anyways. I get it done, even if I'm just going through the motions. I go through the motions. I don't really want to work out. I work out. I really don't want to hammer on a project. I hammer on the project. Don't really want to get up and get out of bed. Yeah. I get up and get out of bed. Now, these could be signals that you need some time off. And those signals might be right. They could be correct. But don't take today off. Not today. Wait until tomorrow. Don't give in to the immediate gratification that is whispering in your ear. Shut that down. Do not listen to that little voice. Instead, go through the motions. Lift the weights, sprint the hill, work on the project, get out of bed. Now, as an overall rule, I do not like procrastination. You need to get things done. But if you are going to rest, that is one thing that you should procrastinate on. That's the one thing I want you to put off until tomorrow. And if, when tomorrow comes, you still feel like you need to rest or you need to take a break, then okay. Take it. But the chances are you won't. You won't need that rest. Chances are you will realize that the desire to rest was just weakness. It was just the desire to take the path of least resistance, the downhill path, the easy path. And by simply going through the motions, you overcame that path. And you stayed on the righteous path, the disciplined path. You stayed on the war path, which is right where you know that you belong. And I think that's all I've got for tonight. Echo, before we go, is there any way that people can support this podcast?
Well, yes, there is actually. All right, yeah, we'll go over a couple ways. The supplements. That's more supporting yourself, ultimately, because you do get 10% off and you get good supplements, which is rare, mind you. But anyway, Onnit is the company. It's onnit.com/Jocko. That's how you get 10% off. Alpha Brain for your brain. Shroom Tech for your performance, body performance.
Warrior bars for your stomach.
Yeah, bro. We get. My friends came over from Arizona this past weekend, and I worked out or whatever. That we're still cooking, so I busted out a Warrior bar, and we're cruising, and all the kids too, 3 years old, 6 years old, and then they ate my Warrior bars. Kids, and there's a little bit of spice to it.
Did they then start getting after it?
Yeah, but in the spirit of accuracy, they had been getting after it big time even before that. But anyway, the point there is that they do taste good. Even 3-year-olds don't mind a little spice. That's how good they taste.
Yeah.
Not to say that you're a 3-year-old if you eat them, though. They're good for it. They're Warrior bars.
Yeah.
Buffalo meat. Gluten-free, by the way.
They didn't call them 3-year-olds bars.
Nope. They didn't call them formula. They didn't call them that. It's Warrior bars. Yeah. No, they're good, though. Really
when
good.
I go on trips now, like I go to speak with a company or I'm going to work with, a lot of times they provide lunch. A lot of times now, there's Warrior bars at lunch. Just saying.
Oh, man. Cool. That's advanced.
They're fully engaged in what we're doing, which is awesome.
And you mentioned us training. Thank you for that, by the way. Bringing that up again. I was going to take some Shroom Tech just to be like, today's the day. And I didn't.
Mm-hmm. That was problematic.
Yeah. You understand? Yeah.
And I also, when we got done yesterday, I kind of led you in. I said, hey, man, you know what? Here's the deal. Because just to put this in context, yesterday, not a good day for Echo on the mats.
Here's the thing. It started good.
Okay.
In my opinion, given my trajectory learning, all that.
It wasn't a
Jocko.
great
Thank
day,
you.
right, for Echo on the mat. It was a day of
You know they say either you win or you learn. Bro, I
You
learned
a lot.
yes,
You
yeah,
learned
there's a lot
Okay,
of learning.
so we get done, and we're doing a little debrief. We got Big Andy there too, and I went over a little something with Andy. I was like, "Hey man, I really feel this is good for you, and hey, let's do it." And I sit down next to Echo, and I said, "Hey man, I don't know, today you just, normally when you roll, you feel like, about this level, and then today you felt about, I don't know, about maybe 19% worse." And of course, he didn't have his podcast rash guard on,
Mm-hmm.
so he was actually thinking I was going to tell him there was some real,
Yeah,
but maybe there is something real there. I don't know.
I don't know. Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, so it could be attributed to one of those two things. I didn't take Shroom Tech, and I didn't have my rash guard. So one of those is then I think.
Well, I like what you're doing here.
or
Instead
both.
of blaming me,
Yeah.
you're taking the blame on yourself.
Yeah, what's the saying? A really good craftsman blames his tools.
Yeah.
I think that's the actual saying. Anyway, back to the Shroom Tech. That's a good one for performance. Alpha Brain, good too. Anyway, onnit.com/Jocko, 10% off. Support your wallet. Alleviate it by 10%. Or give it a 10% break. Yeah, there you go. And it supports this podcast. It's like a circle of support. Like Onnit supports us. We support Onnit. We think that technically, even if Onnit wasn't we weren't sponsored by Onnit, I have Shroom Tech. I've been taking Shroom Tech before that. So it's kind of anyway, circle of support there. Another good way, Amazon. The Amazon click through. You go to the website, jockopodcast.com, click through the Amazon link. It's also in the store. Click through before you do your holiday shopping or any shopping. That's a really good way. The key there is to remember to do it, and it doesn't cost you anything.
What do you put a sticky on your computer?
Yeah. That's a really good way to support this podcast. Does a lot.
Costs you nothing and provides good support.
Yep.
And it's really kind of invisible to you other than that little motion. So that sounds like a really good way to support the podcast.
It's kind of like you ever watch
Jeff Bezos, right? That's his name, the leader of Amazon.
Bezos.
Jeff Bezos? Yeah. Hey, that guy seems to have enough money at Amazon.com that throwing a couple shillings at the podcast here seems like a good plan to me.
Yeah.
We support that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Clicking through Amazon is when you watch Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
At the end when the support comes, it saves everybody.
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, we want the support, but it's not saving people's lives.
But it's kind of dope like that. I'm saying, anyway, it's good. Amazon, yeah, click through the website. That's cool for your holiday shopping. Or just some duct tape. Somebody sent me some Penn State duct tape. Who's that? Did Debbie send?
No, that wasn't Debbie. That was Sarah.
Sarah. Yeah. One of those ladies.
Now everything's covered in Penn State duct tape.
Yeah, I know. Speaking of Sarah Armstrong.
Yes.
The girls' T-shirts are in. I didn't announce that before. People have been, in the game and kind of seeing them. But yeah, okay, the girls' shirts are in. They're V-neck. They're shirts for the women. 4 colors. Black.
Approved.
Gray.
Approved.
OD green.
Approved.
Pink.
All right.
Sorry, Brad. You got. What do you call it? Outvoted.
I got vetoed or
yeah,
something.
vetoed. You got vetoed. You were literally the only one who didn't want pink.
Seriously?
I know, it's like your podcast and all this stuff.
Okay.
Anyway, they're good, man. I think they came out good. We got some good reviews from Allie. Allie, by the way, Allie and Cassie.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when they send the the package, they send the packages.
These
out.
are, for those of you that don't know, that's the crew.
Yeah.
That
The behind the scenes.
that packages up the packages.
Yeah, and they get after it. Like Allie will be like if someone's from I forget where, but it was like Dale King was one of them, or she'll write like "Go Cubs," or like if you're in Chicago or something, she'll be like "Go Cubs," and she'll write it on your
Personal message.
Yeah, because she's like, you kind of feel like you know the person, you know? Because really, when you think about it, it's like, oh, shoot, I know how big they are because they're shirt size. I know where they live, you know, kind of thing. I mean, it's not like they're going to stalk, nothing like that. But I'm just saying they kind of,
they're not going to stalk you, but they'll support your local baseball team.
Yeah, if need be. Nonetheless, the only reason I bring it up, even they were like, dang, these are really good shirts.
Okay, we get the message.
Good.
They're pink.
They're not pink. Some are pink. Some are OD green. Discipline equals freedom. Women's shirts. Money. Also, of course, rash guards. 19-ish% improvement so far, holding up. That claim has been holding up. UFC fighters confirming. Jocko confirming with me when I didn't have my rash guard and I was 19% less effective. Anyway, and they happen to look really good according to the feedback I've been getting. So anyway, if you go to jockostore.com, you can look at them and look at the girls' t-shirts and the other shirts on there. If you like them, get one. Support that way. Represent. Also, hoodies. Yes, of course, hoodies are out.
Chilly outside.
Yeah,
Need
it
a
is.
hoodie.
Yep. It's like a heavier weight. It's not the heavy.
That was 4 heavies, I think.
Yeah, it's not like snow, you know.
Like 2 heavies.
Well, because someone emailed me. I got to remember all the people like who actually asked these specific questions. But he was like, how heavy is it? Is it, well, it was, what was the brand? Carhartt? Yeah. Is it like, I understand a Carhartt, that's going to, you know, provide this and, you know, as far as warmth and
straight
heaviness.
Up Arctic situation.
Yeah.
So, Carhartt on.
Exactly right. So that's a good example. So I'm like, you know, how is it comparatively? It's not that. It's not Arctic conditions. It's like cocaine conditions.
What conditions?
Cocaine.
What's that?
Mauna Kea. How about that? It's Mauna Kea condition.
What's
Cocaine
that?
is a mountain on Kauai where you go up. It's like, it gets kind of cold.
If you have any other references that no one understands, that's cool. Do it.
Anyway, it's almost the heaviest as far as hoodies go. But anyway, they're good. Check those out. If you like them, go ahead and support that way. Grab one of those. Just keep yourself kind of warm or like, you know, as far as when you work out and stuff. Or just wearing them. So yeah, there it is. Of course, subscribe. YouTube, I'm putting more videos. Currently, I'm putting more. I put one the other day. I'm put one today. They're like little bite-sized like bits, you know. Because sometimes you don't want to listen to the 2 hours, especially on YouTube. You just want to listen. How do I like recover from setbacks at work?
Jocko McNuggets.
Yeah, exactly right. So you can look at them for like shorter times, like 3 to 8 minutes or something. Or if you know someone who's like, hey, you were asking me this question, remember? You send them that, boom, advice. It's like shareable advice kind of thing. Anyway, that's
I like
on
what
YouTube.
You're doing there.
Yeah, so subscribe to YouTube. You can support that way. And iTunes, of course. And
you got a problem? Here's a 2.5 hour podcast.
I know, listen to this podcast. It's like when people are like, hey, I'm trying to get over this situation at work. And then they say, hey, read this book. I'm like, bro, I go to work tomorrow.
Yeah. I need to know now.
Yes, exactly. So it's kind of the same situation with those YouTube bite-sized videos. Or you can just revisit the subject matter. You know what I mean? Like if you listen to it, like, let me go let me revisit it. Reinforce, exactly. So there you go. And then, write a review on iTunes.
It doesn't take you long to cut those things out, does it? Because I think you should just put a massive number of those out. That's my opinion.
Just to be on there, right? Yeah, a lot of times I'll think of it in terms of like, you know how when you put out the podcast every week, it's like, ooh, the new one's on. Let me check it out. So a lot of times I'm like dogmatic in that way where I think just through habit, I think of it that way. So I'm like, okay, I'm put a bite. Wait, you just put one. Can't let it marinate for a little while before you put it in. But I shouldn't think about it that way. It just needs to be on there.
Think of it this way. Instead of thinking it that way, think of it this way. When you put one out that's 5 minutes and 56 seconds long, 5 minutes and 56 moments later, that someone's waiting for the next one.
Yeah.
So hook them up.
Yeah.
Take care of some people. Echo Charles.
All right, let's do that. I'm in. And boom, there you go.
Good. A couple other things. Jocko white tea, if you want to get some of that. It's probably probably going to be the only beverage you're ever going to want to drink ever again. And I think that there's a time coming in the very near future where when you go to a bar or to a club out at night to have a good time, I think in the future, the only thing that they're going to be selling in the bar, in the club, in the restaurant is just Jocko white tea. There's not going to be any more beer, no more whiskey, no more wine, no more poison that tastes like gasoline. I declare that those days are numbered, my friend. And I think it's going to be time people are going to be wanting to drink something that makes you smarter instead of something that makes you dumber, something that makes you stronger instead of making you weaker, something that makes you healthier instead of making you sicker.
Dang.
So that's why I think people are going to be on it. Amazon, you can get some of that. While you're also on Amazon, if you like this podcast and what we talked about, you can get a book. And this is, sometimes people find the podcast and they haven't read the book Extreme Ownership by me and my brother Leif Babin. That's pretty normal, right? And sometimes it's the opposite.
Yeah.
People got the book and then they found the podcast. Mm-hmm. So either way, but I'm just confirming, if you're a person that listens to the podcast, the book is also there. You can grab that from Amazon. Mm-hmm. And also, if you kind of want to keep these conversations going with Echo Charles and myself, you can find us. We will be on the interwebs, all of the interwebs, on Twitter, Instagram, and of course, we even on that Facebookie. Echo is at Echo Charles, and I am at Jocko Willink. And finally, thanks everybody for listening. If you're in uniform, thank you for serving. Thanks for taking the fight to the enemy. Thanks for stopping criminals. Thanks for putting out fires. Thanks to all of you in uniform in service. And the rest of you troopers out there fighting your own fight, make it a good fight. Make it the kind of fight that win or lose, you walk off the field of battle knowing you gave it everything you could give and you had nothing left. And that fight that I'm talking about is life. And while I was talking about going through the motions sometimes, when you just haven't got the intrinsic drive to go full on at a task, let me tell you what, when it comes to life, don't just go through the motions. Live. Live. Fight the good fight. Live an outstanding life. Don't just go through life. Don't just get through it. Instead, get after it. So, until next time, this is Echo and Jocko. Out.